Can I ask you, Daniel, because you wrote an important piece for the New York Times, and you laid out a couple of things. One, definitely you called for a ceasefire, but partly to get hostages out. Tell us how you mean and why that would work, or how that would work in the middle of something like this.
So I think what we're seeing at the moment is that the potential on-ramp to a full ceasefire probably runs via a time-limited cessation of hostilities that allows some of the hostages to get out, perhaps then leading on to getting a deal for the rest to get out. I think once it comes to the soldiers being held by Hamas, that will be in a more significant prisoner exchange. And I think what we are perhaps moving towards is that there would be, I think we're now talking possibly 5 days, a 5-day cessation, get out a significant number of those being held, possibly have Palestinian women and children being held in Israeli jails, released in exchange, get a much bigger infusion of humanitarian aid in. But then two things happen, Christiane. And you showed the march inside Israel to get the hostages released, and you've talked about the dynamic in the Israeli internal conversation. And I think two things happen if that first prisoner hostage release happens. The dynamic of the conversation inside Israel shifts, and you have more pressure to get the rest out. And then the choice is clear. It's either the military mission or it's the prisoner release. And the other thing that happens is the outside pressure, which is now accumulating. The West is playing catch-up. America and Europe are playing catch-up. The rest of the world was there much earlier that this needs to end. But the pressure from the outside, once there is a 5-day cessation, will it be so easy for Israel to resume with this kind of bombardment and killing?
Well, the Israeli people want to see, of course they want their loved ones back, but they do want to see the prosecution of the war as well, and they do want to see Hamas neutralized. So that, and yes, and we pointed out the sort of unease now amongst some of the staunchest allies of Israel. Everybody's talking about if Hamas is destroyed, neutralized politically, militarily, what then? We know that Prime Minister Netanyahu twice has taken, or 3 times has taken the opportunity to speak to American media, each time sort of moving the goalposts on what Israel would do afterwards. First it was, security presence for the foreseeable. Then it was a military envelope that we just heard this weekend. How much appetite is there for that?
Well, I think Israel has gone into this without a clear plan for the morning after. And in order to understand that, I think we need to understand that Israel has largely neglected the idea that one does politics with the Palestinians, one does solution-oriented approaches. And therefore, it's been difficult to get that answer in any kind of clear fashion. Now, I think the most likely outcome is that Hamas will continue to exist. Its military capacity may be downgraded. Politically, it is probably stronger than before. There will still be a Hamas. How conflicts end is when the people of violence eventually find ways out of that. Palestinians are in no hurry to sit down with Israel after the killing of 4,500 children. And of course the Israelis want to see Hamas removed. But that is an almost...
After the killing of 1,400
After the killing of...
children.
They lowered it to 1,200, but it does, the numbers don't matter. It was horrific. So this is the unrealistic part. To expect that a movement embedded in a people who are living without freedom and rights, that there will not be armed resistance. However, the other part of this equation, of course, is what about the Palestinian Authority? What about Abbas? What about this whole other side? And this is what's missing.